Now, when you think of a game, you probably imagine something fun. Maybe tag, maybe hide and seek, maybe even Monopoly if you're into ruining friendships. But this game was nothing like that. It was a game where the players were terrified, the rules non-existent, and the stakes, just life and death. Jasmine White, 27 years old, mother of 4, resident of South Bend, Indiana. By all appearances, just another parent trying to entertain her kids, except her idea of fun was pretending to abandon them. Yeah, you heard that right. This wasn't some harmless prank. No silly peekaboo or pillow fight. Jasmine's favorite game involved racing her kids to the car, jumping in, locking the doors, and then, for that extra touch of psychological trauma, acting like she was about to leave them behind. Because, nothing says quality parenting like tricking your kids into believing you're abandoning them. But here's where it gets even worse. One of her children, an 8-year-old little girl, hated the game. She told investigators she never liked playing it. But Jasmine? She kept playing anyway. And then, on August 29th, 2024, it all went terribly, terribly wrong. That night, Jasmine played the game one last time. She didn't just pretend to leave this time. She actually started driving away. And her daughter? Desperate, terrified, clinging to the car door handle, pleading for her mother not to leave her behind. Until she lost her grip. Her foot slipped under the rear tire. And the next sound? The little girl was on the ground. Her head hit the pavement. And the game, Jasmine's sick, twisted little game, was over. What happened next? Well, Jasmine had an explanation. But was it the truth? Or was this more than just a tragic accident? Stay with me, because this case only gets more disturbing from here. Welcome to True Crime Stories videos. I welcome you, my viewers, and most especially my subscribers, for your support as we keep improving and bringing you daily told and untold true crime stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. The information presented in this video is based on publicly available data and sources. The purpose of this content is to raise awareness about the issues and events that are happening around the world. While we strive to provide accurate information, we may not always capture the exact details of an event. If you were present at the event or have first-hand knowledge, we encourage you to share your perspective and engage in a constructive dialogue. Our goal is to spark meaningful conversations and raise awareness, not to spread misinformation. Games. We play them to laugh, to bond, to pass the time. Hide and seek. Tag, Simon says. And then there's this game, Jasmine White's game. A game where the stakes weren't points or bragging rights, but fear. A game where her own children weren't players. They were victims. Now, before we go any further, let's go over the rules. Because you see, every game has rules. At least, that's what a responsible adult would say. Rule number 1. Race your kids to the car. Rule number 2. Jump in before they can. Rule number 3. Lock the doors. Rule number 4. Pretend you're going to drive away without them. White played this game often, not once, not twice, but over and over again. And here's the thing, at least one of her children hated it. I don't like this game. A plea. A tiny voice. A child asking their own mother to stop. And Jasmine? She ignored them. She kept playing anyway, because that's the kind of game this was. Not one for fun, not one for laughter, but one where fear was the whole point. On August 29th, 2024, the game took a turn. White started driving, not pretend, not just a tease. She put her foot on the gas and actually started moving, fast. Her 8-year-old daughter, desperate not to be left behind, grabbed onto the door handle, tight, holding on for dear life. But hands get sweaty, arms get tired, and cars don't stop just because a child is clinging to them. She fell. Her foot got caught under the rear tire. Her head hit the pavement. Her teeth, 5 of them, scattered across the concrete. A game? This wasn't a game. This was a mother's nightmare. But the most chilling part? It wasn't even a surprise. Because Jasmine had been warned. Her kids had begged her to stop. And yet, she kept playing. So I have to ask, was this really an accident? Or was Jasmine White's twisted little game bound to end this way all along? August 29th, 2024. A quiet evening. The kind of night where nothing should go wrong. Children laughing. Little footsteps slapping against pavement. They knew the drill. Mom's game was starting. Race to the car. Try to get in before she locks the doors. And if you don't, well, good luck. But this time, something felt different. Maybe it was the way White gripped the wheel. Maybe it was the fact that she wasn't just rolling forward a few inches like usual. This time, she drove. Not 5 miles per hour, not 10, 15 miles per hour, in a parking lot. "Mom, stop, please!" She wasn't laughing. She wasn't playing. She was holding on to the door handle for dear life. Her tiny arms straining, knuckles white, her feet struggling to keep up. But cars don't care. She slipped. Her foot got caught under the rear tire. She hit the pavement, head first. Her skull slammed against concrete. And just like that, the game was over. For a split second, nothing. Just stillness. And then, her siblings screaming, running towards her, her little body lying twisted on the ground, blood pooling beneath her head. Her teeth, 5 of them, scattered across the pavement like tiny broken pieces of the childhood she'd just lost. And Jasmine White, the mother, the driver, the one who played the game. What did she do? Did she leap out of the car in horror? Did she cradle her baby girl, sobbing, realizing the consequences of her twisted little game? Number, she sat there, like she was still processing what had just happened, like she wasn't sure if the game was really over yet. By the time first responders arrived, the damage was done. Severe head trauma, multiple skull fractures, facial lacerations, 5 teeth gone, a child, her child, broken, bleeding. And for what? A game. Picture this. Your child is lying on the pavement, bleeding, broken, barely clinging to consciousness. Most parents, any parent, would be inconsolable. But Jasmine White? She wasn't screaming. She wasn't sobbing. She wasn't even running to her daughter's side. She just sat there, like she had just missed a red light, like she was inconvenienced, like this was not the worst moment of her life. Now, I don't know about you, but if I accidentally ran over my child, I would be doing one of 2 things. 1. Screaming hysterically. 2. Collapsing into an absolute mess of guilt and regret. Jasmine White did neither. Instead, she got out of the car slowly, walked around calmly, and when witnesses rushed to the scene asking her what happened, she shrugged and said, "It was just a game." A game. Oh. Well, in that case, someone should have reminded her that in games, the goal is not to send your own child to the ICU. By the time paramedics arrived, White's 8-year-old daughter was barely conscious. Her skull fractured, her tiny face swollen and bloodied. The trauma so severe, her teeth were literally missing. And Jasmine? Well, she wasn't crying. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. She wasn't pleading for her daughter's life. She was talking, explaining, excusing. It was just a game. She told officers her daughter had tripped. She claimed she had no idea the little girl was still holding onto the car when she drove off. We all know how easy it is to miss the sight of your own child dangling off a moving vehicle, screaming your name. But here's the thing. There were witnesses. And those witnesses, they heard the little girl crying. They saw her clinging to the car door. They watched as White drove forward anyway. They knew, and deep down, so did she. Now let's pause for a second. Let's take a step back. Was this truly an accident? Or was this something far worse? Because here's what we know. White had played this game before. Her children had begged her to stop. And yet, she kept doing it. So the question is, was this really a mother's momentary lapse in judgment? Or was this something else? Something colder? Something that should have been stopped long before that little girl hit the pavement? Jasmine White had her story. Now it was time for the police to get theirs. White sat in a small, windowless room. One metal chair, one table, and across from her, a detective who had seen it all before. But even he wasn't prepared for the excuse that was about to leave her mouth. Jasmine insisted, again, that this was just a game, that she never meant to hurt anyone, that her daughter's injuries were nothing more than a tragic accident. But then, she slipped. Somewhere between denial and justification, White made a confession that changed everything. She admitted that, yes, she knew her daughter was still holding onto the car, but she thought the girl would let go. Because that's exactly what an 8-year-old child does when she's terrified of being left behind. She just lets go. That statement? It wasn't just reckless. It was damning. It proved she was aware of the danger. And more importantly, it proved she didn't care enough to stop. Now, up until this point, everything had been based on witness testimony. But forensic investigators, they had hard evidence. Tire marks in the parking lot, proving White accelerated. Bloodstains on the pavement, proving the force of impact. A pattern of previous injuries on the little girl's body, proving this wasn't the first time she had suffered. This wasn't just a game. This was negligence. This was endangerment. This was a mother gambling with her child's life and losing. And now? Jasmine White was about to find out that games like these, they always end with consequences. She survived. After days in the hospital, after stitches, after doctors carefully piecing her back together, Jasmine White's daughter lived. But survival? That's not the same as being okay. Her face, once full of youthful innocence, now bore permanent reminders of what happened that night. 5 missing teeth, a skull fracture that took months to heal, nightmares that refused to let her forget. And her siblings, they weren't just witnesses, they were victims too. The other kids? They learned a brutal lesson that day, that the person meant to protect them, their own mother, was the same person who put them in harm's way. That no matter how many times they begged, no matter how loudly they cried, sometimes parents don't listen. And so, the system did what the system always does when a parent fails. The children were removed from White's custody. Because playing a game is one thing. Playing with your children's lives? That's another. Another case of reckless parenting. But here's the real question. Where is the line? What's the difference between harmless fun and reckless endangerment? At what point does playing turn into risking lives? And most importantly, when a child says they don't feel safe, do you listen? Jasmine White never thought of herself as a bad mother. She never planned to hurt her children, but she chose to ignore their fear. She chose to dismiss their cries. And one reckless choice, one game taken too far, cost her everything. She was sentenced. She lost custody. And now? Now her children will grow up knowing that some scars, they don't just fade, they stay. So now the question is yours. Was this truly just an accident? A moment of playfulness taken too far? Or was it something darker, reckless negligence masquerading as a game? Because here's the reality. One decision, one impulsive act can change everything. It can scar a child for life. It can break a family apart. And sometimes it can even end a life altogether. But what do you think? Was Jasmine White simply a mother who made a horrible mistake? Or did she willfully ignore her children's fear, ignoring their cries until it was too late? Tell me in the comments. Because this isn't just a story, it's a conversation. If you're drawn to stories like these, stories that make you think, that make you question, that keep you on edge, then you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the dark side of human nature. Because trust me, the next story, it's even more chilling than this one, and you won't want to miss it.